If the game studio FromSoft is known for anything, it's unquestionably the Soulsborne games. Dark Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, all highly regarded combat-heavy games lauded for their difficulty. They started off with games like King's Field, Armored Core, and Shadow Tower, all of which are action games that more or less line up with what you would expect from the company today. But 4 years after the release of their debut title, FromSoft released a game called Echo Night. Echo Night is a 1998 survival horror game that was nothing like what FromSoft had ever released before. It's a first-person PS1 game where you take the role of a man trying to solve a supernatural mystery by helping peaceful ghosts move on to the afterlife while surviving deadly encounters with hostile ones. It's a heavy departure from the norm for the company, but it was successful enough to spawn a trilogy of games, so let's find out if FromSoft was able to make a good horror game. Before we hop into it, I'd like to take a brief moment to thank the sponsor of this video, World of Warships. World of Warships is a realistic naval combat game that allows you to experience exciting battles in a wide assortment of different, highly detailed war vessels. There's currently an ongoing collaboration with Blue Archive featuring lots of new content, including 5 new fully voiced commanders, 3 new ship skins, and 4 special flags. This collaboration features tons of different ship classes that have Blue Archive themes. Each class plays entirely differently, adding a complex layer of strategy and plenty of gameplay variety. Whether you're going in solo or with friends, you'll always experience some thrilling gameplay. During the collaboration, you have the chance to get some extra rewards. All you have to do is choose your favorite of the 5 commanders, use their invite code in the description below, and complete the special campaign mission. At the end of the campaign, 180 winners will be selected to receive a random Blue Archive commander and 7 days of a premium account. World of Warships is available entirely for free on both PC and console. By using the link below, new users can get a huge starter pack with Blue Archive content and beginner-friendly bonuses. Make sure to check out the game for a great blend of action, strategy, and skill. The game begins with a short cutscene detailing the story of Orpheus, a ship that disappeared without a trace in 1913. 24 years later, 25-year-old Richard Osmond received an envelope from his father containing nothing but a lone key. Moments later, he receives a phone call from the police claiming that his father's home has been burned to the ground. He's escorted to the ruins of the secluded home by an officer, where the two begin to search the place. Because Echo Night was released on the PS1, the developers were forced to use a very unusual control scheme. The PS1 controller had no analog sticks, forcing you to use the D-pad and bumpers to get around. The default control scheme uses up and down to move forward and back, and left and right to rotate yourself. L1 and L2 pan the camera up and down, while R1 and R2 make your character strafe from side to side. Thankfully, you're not forced to use these controls. The game actually provides you with 4 different options to choose from. The one that felt the most comfortable for me was called Strafe Config 2, where your character movement is controlled by the D-pad while the bumpers control your head. L1 and R1 rotate your head while L2 and R2 adjust the angle. This is still fairly clunky at first, but I got used to it quickly. In the bedroom of the house, Richard stumbles upon a grandfather clock that can be unlocked using the key his father mailed to him. Winding the clock reveals a hidden passageway in the wall. Upon examining the book on the floor, Richard is whisked away into the past through supernatural means. It's never fully explained how this happens, but this is a frequent mechanic in Echo Night. Interacting with certain objects or people will allow you to relive any associated memories. In the case of this book, Richard is sent to a train station where he will witness a piece of his father's past. We learn that Richard's father, Henry, was a demon hunter chasing after a possessed man named William. He tried to use a magic blue stone to stop William from doing evil things like mixing Skittles and M&Ms in the same bowl at a party or, killing people. William bests Henry in a confrontation by using his own granddaughter as a hostage before shooting his adversary during a moment of hesitation. The bullet hit the blue stone, splitting it into 2 pieces. Henry gives one of the pieces to William's granddaughter, promising that it will protect her before he's chased to the back of the train, where he dives off to save himself. I cut out a lot of the fluff there because it is so unoriginal and boring. William is possessed by this magic red stone embedded in a knife, and the only way to stop it is to use the magic blue stone. This is just a really overdone plot setup, but the gameplay at least was really interesting. You get to climb atop the train cart and eavesdrop on the conversation through a latch on the roof. Thankfully, this is where the real game starts, despite the weird prologue. Richard is returned to the real world, where he finds a painting of the missing ship from the opening cutscene. This acts as another memory gateway thing, transporting him into a memory of the ship from the opening cutscene before it mysteriously disappeared. Richard is promptly confronted by the ghost of the ship's captain, wanting to know why some stranger appeared on the deck. He leads Richard to the captain's quarters, where he demands you stay put. There's actually voice acting now. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but most of the time it's around this quality.
You must go outside of this room. Is that understood?
Despite his directions, Richard throws caution to the wind and decides to explore the ship, immediately being confronted by a ghost girl who begins to beat the snot out of him with psychic powers. Before he can die, one of the ceiling lights turns on, causing the hostile ghost to disappear. This is our main line of defense in this game. It's survival horror, but you don't get a weapon. All you have is the power of light. The first thing you need to do every time you enter a room is find the light switch and turn it on to scare off hostile ghosts. Passive ghosts are basically shadows with fully black textures, while hostile ghosts have detailed designs. Oftentimes when dealing with a hostile ghost, light switches won't work, meaning you have to figure out a way to get power to them before you can fully explore a new room. Sometimes this leads to a mad dash to get whatever you can see before the ghost turns you inside out. Thankfully, finding the switches is never too big of an issue. When they're deactivated, they have glowing LED indicators so you can see them clearly. These indicators shut off as soon as the lights are on. Since this game is still fairly bright, even in the dark, double-checking that LED is helpful to tell if the room you're entering in is actually safe. I think this is an incredible mechanic. Survival horror is one of my favorite game genres, and not having weapons can often make these things even scarier. You can't fight back against these ghosts, all you can do is temporarily banish them if you move fast enough, and that helps to make an older game like this scarier. Richard moves to the helm, finding a ghost gazing out at the sea, reminiscing about being separated from the love of his life. This is the first ghost that we can help out. By speaking with him, we are teleported into a memory of his, giving us access to new items and information that can be used to put his ghost to rest. In this memory, the man's fiancée has lost her engagement ring and is searching for it before bidding her lover goodbye as he sets out to sea. Richard helps find the ring, but the woman is still too late to say goodbye. She gives Richard the ring, telling him to find her fiancé and bring it to him. Richard is pulled from the memory where he does just that, bringing that ghost peace and allowing him to move on to whatever afterlife awaits him. When you help out ghosts, they'll drop astral pieces, these glowing orbs. There are 26 ghosts to help and 26 astral pieces to collect. All 26 are needed to get the good ending of the game, so that's what we'll be aiming for. Because there are so many, I won't be mentioning every single passive ghost in detail. As Richard moves forward, he stumbles upon a man in a room with a broken light switch. His memories indicate that he's fearful of the dark because of some past ghostly encounters. Richard grabs some rubber gloves before exiting the memory in search of a way to fix the lights. This is a really cool puzzle. There's a fuse box nearby operating with metal wires connecting two posts. One of the wires is missing, meaning Richard needs to find another wire and install it to restore light. Initially, I thought that we could just move the left wire, help the ghost, then move it back. But I would go into my inventory, select the rubber gloves to move things, and then get shocked into oblivion. I later learned that you need to go to the pause menu, then the items tab, then you're given the option to equip something. That's one of the tricky things about some older games. They expect you to have the manual to learn all the controls instead of teaching you through gameplay. Unfortunately, this game is not easy to get your hands on. I kinda just fumbled around until I found the pause menu to figure this stuff out, and even that didn't fully help. Fairly early in the game, I grabbed a map that just never appeared in my inventory, so I navigated through my crappy memory instead. After rewatching the footage, I'm almost certain that I would have had access to the entire map if I had just known about the item screen. Even with the gloves equipped, Richard cannot move the fuse, so he heads to a nearby storage room where the ghost girl from before is not happy to see him. He snags some wire cutters from a shelf before booking it. At this point, it's light outside. That's right, this game actually has a full-on day-night cycle. It doesn't do much other than change the light level outside, but there is a puzzle later on that requires it to function. Richard moves back to the captain's quarters where a wardrobe sits bound with wire. He uses the wire cutters to open it, finding a comet book. When this book is used on one of these sun plaques scattered throughout the ship, it brings Richard to this creepy guy who has my favorite voice performance in the entire game.
Are you having fun with your journey aboard the ship?
You can give him spectral pieces in exchange for holy water, an item that will slightly heal you and cure you if you're possessed. Now that's cool in theory, but I was never possessed. I don't know how to get possessed. There are way stronger healing items scattered throughout the map, so I ended up just using the holy water as a way to count how many astral pieces I had. As Richard leaves, the creepy man hands him one half of the broken stone from the train. I'm not sure how he got it, but supposedly it can protect us if Richard's dad was telling the truth. After picking up the wire that was holding the wardrobe closed, Richard uses it to fix the fuse box and free the soul of the scared ghost who drops an iron key. This can be used on a door near the fuse box, unlocking a new section of the boat. There are two branching pathways. One is being blocked by a ghost who claims Richard is violating the dress code, and one is a long hallway with several doors. There's a drunkard ghost laying against the wall talking about how his friend Ed went crazy after going into the room at the end of the hallway. Richard moves to the room on his left, finding 4 figures with empty indents in their chests. A medal that fits into one indent is found in the vent, meaning there are 3 more to go. 3 medals and 3 passengers that work together to lock up Ed. I guess it's time we pry some information from their cold dead. hands. The drunkard can only move on if he tries Ed's famous drink again. To recreate it, Richard finds the recipe hidden in one of Ed's paintings and brings it back to the guy for a medal and an astral piece. The other two ghosts are twins, both of whom are stuck in dark rooms with broken light switches. While the first girl's room is completely safe, the second girl's room has a hostile ghost inside. Fortunately, their rooms are directly linked to one another, something you'll learn by closing the door to one room and seeing that the other door mirrors it. Since the ghost is hiding in the bathroom, Richard blocks it with a radiator, freeing the girls and earning 2 more medals. Correctly placing all 4 medals reveals the room where Ed is hidden. Supposedly, he saw the birth of a demon in that room at the end of the hall, hence why he went crazy. Ed moves on and drops a key, allowing us to go to the silly demon birth room. The ghost girl is here and there is no way to get to the light switch, meaning we'll have to come back later. In the previously empty hallway, the ghost of a boy claims that we need to free that little girl's soul too, before sending us to a memory of a mine shaft. After exploring this mine for a while, Richard finds a man whose daughter went missing here. Her favorite doll was left sitting in this corner, so he knows she has to be somewhere around here. After breaking some rocks, he finds the corpse of his daughter, who presumably died during a cave-in. This is clearly the ghost girl, so Richard casually steals the one tangible memory the father could bring back home with him and gives it to the ghost of the little girl. This allows her to move on. She doesn't drop an astral piece, but that does check one hostile ghost off the enemy list. In the bedroom next door, Richard finds a tuxedo, although he's immediately knocked out after taking it. He wakes up in a room with a doctor who is racked with guilt after being responsible for the death of a man named Arthur. Supposedly he was accidentally poisoned. After escaping the room and setting up a film reel, a record is shown of how Arthur actually died. William killed him with the cursed knife alongside an unknown woman. This realization is enough to allow the doctor to move on. But just because the doctor can move on doesn't mean we can. First, we need to cross the hallway to the casino. The casino is one of the most frustrating parts of Echo Night. In order to get the good ending, you need to set every single soul free. 3 of them are in this casino, and you can only set their souls free by gambling. You're given a mere 5 credits to bet on roulette and are told to do your best. Since we're gambling, we're fighting luck. There are casino tickets scattered throughout the map that you can use to get more credits, but there are only so many total. The best option is to find a save point, then bet until you either win or have to reload. You have to win at both roulette and blackjack before all 3 ghosts will be at rest, which even with emulator save states took me 45 minutes. I don't understand why they buried the good ending behind this wall of luck. I'm not a gambling or a card game person, so this entire process was just mind-numbing to me. It just felt like a boring waste of time in a game that I was actually really enjoying. Now that all the ghosts are free, Richard can grab the suit he grabbed and use it to pass by the ghost that was blocking the hallway. This leads Richard to Arthur and Hilda, the son and daughter of William. That's right, the video we watched of William was of him killing his own children. After acquiring the cursed knife, William used its power to make their family rich through ill-gotten gains. His children planned to put a stop to this by killing him, but their father had the same idea. The siblings send Richard to the past, where he witnesses a king, one of the owners of the Red Gem, being stabbed to death by a mercenary named Alan Rockwell. This makes no sense to me. William and his 2 children are part of the Rockwell family. These kids made it very clear that William attained this knife and brought the family power and wealth over the course of just 1 generation. So who the hell's Alan? What member of the family is he? Is he William's father? Then how come the Rockwells only attained power after William was in possession of the stone? The siblings claim that Richard will need 4 ornate plates to reach their father and will put a stop to things. They already have 1, but Richard will need to get the other 3. One of my favorite mechanics in this section of the game is distracting the hostile ghosts. There's a mechanical raven that you can fix and use to lure this hostile ghost away from the light switch, which I think is really cool. This sadly only happens once. I really would have enjoyed using small distractions to free up light switches throughout the entire game. Half the time you need to light up a room, the switch will be right next to the door, which can kind of trivialize the darkness mechanic. Putting all the switches on farther walls and leaving players to sneak their way over would have been such a cool concept. Richard moves forwards, meeting the ghost of a young boy who tells him to insert this massive fisheye into a slot in the bottom of the pool during a night cycle. Unfortunately, the pool is completely full and needs to be drained first. There's a pump to do just that right underneath our feet, but it's being guarded by one of the hostile ghosts. In the next room, Richard can enter a memory at a graveyard where he breaks into a mausoleum. He runs into one of William's victims, the hostile ghost, and takes a pendant from her. William appears and attempts to take Richard's life, but Richard swipes a plate that can be used to activate several exit pathways. After escaping the memory, we have ourselves the second plate as well as the item needed to allow the other hostile ghost to move on. That gets rid of the only other hostile ghost we've seen thus far, meaning I'm sure we're completely safe for the rest of the game. The water pump isn't too difficult to use. There are instructions on the wall, although 2 of the steps are completely smudged out. Using the process of elimination, the pool is quickly drained and the fisheye is placed inside the slot. This action takes Richard into the memory of an old library, which he promptly breaks into and robs, earning himself this old book. This book tells us more about our favorite trite plot device, the good and evil stones. The red one seems to have the power to alter destinies when provided a real sacrifice, while the blue one is a complete mystery. There are only 2 rules to follow. Don't sacrifice too many lives to the red stone, and don't combine the 2 stones. No one knows what'll happen if these rules are broken. Richard returns to the siblings with his plate, netting himself a key to the kitchen. The kitchen has this tiny little elevator inside that you can cram into like Lynn to get to a lower floor. The king who was assassinated by Alan Rockwell appears here as a hostile ghost, and you cannot escape from him. Thankfully, Richard's father is here to flick on the lights. He immediately disappears down a hallway with little to no explanation. The bottom floor isn't too difficult to figure out, but it definitely has some issues. The lights are all off, and patrolling ghosts warn you to be careful. There are some cool puzzles like this locker one where you need to open locker 4, but a locker can only be opened based on the sum of the open doors. So if you have locker 1, 2, and 3 open, you can only open locker 6. Richard finds the power room and turns on the final generator, providing power to this floor. He also finds this communications room where you have to use Morse code on a specific communication channel to spell the name Kreia, which is scratched into the table. Kreia is the name of William's granddaughter. The ghost of her brother appears, asking Richard to bring her this music box before sending him into a memory. After solving a music puzzle and walking down a spiral staircase so long that I thought it was infinitely looping, we find Kreia locked in a cell. Upon receiving the music box, she recognizes Richard from the train. Her grandfather stole her half of the stone, but she's done a lot of research on what they can do. Combining the stones will destroy both, and that is Kreia's ultimate goal. She hands over an earring for her brother, and Richard is sent back to the communications room. By this point, I had helped all but 2 ghosts move on from this area, but I couldn't figure out why. This guy can move on once all the crewmen in the basement are safe, and this guy needs all the lights on. But I restored power, so why is he still here? Apparently, this one singular light switch works backwards. As a refresher, darkness isn't all that dark in this game, so there are glowing LEDs on each switch to indicate whether they are on or off. An LED is only on when the switch is turned off, presumably so you can see it better in the dark. But this single switch is backwards. There's no explanation for it, it's just backwards. Flicking it off will turn on the lights and release the other 2 ghosts, earning us our final plates. With all 4 plates collected, Richard and the siblings are able to unlock this ornate door. The siblings request that the stones be destroyed before moving on. This final area has 4 bedrooms. Arthur's other sister is in one, requesting that you get into Kreia's room. Someone named Jack can supposedly get us in if he sees this photo, so Richard brings it over. He's told to turn the clock in the hallway to the bird icon, which unlocks the door. A painting on the wall is linked to a memory after the king died. Richard grabs a cameo from the body and then uses it to steal all the pigment from the ghost's face. Richard enters the final door where William sits bleeding in a chair. He openly regrets his past actions, showing a memory of Kreia being murdered by a mercenary so William could get his hands on the blue stone, even though Kreia was in a dungeon, alive, after William took the blue stone. What? William warns Richard that his father has been taken over by the red stone, and he must enter the memory of Kreia's death to get the blue one back so that both stones can be destroyed. By grabbing the bullet used to kill her, Richard saves Kreia from the mercenary. They step outside without retrieving the weapon for self-defense, immediately getting Kreia kidnapped by another mercenary. He tries to shoot Richard, but Kreia unkidnaps herself and takes the bullets, toppling the guy off the cliff and leaving the stone behind. When Richard returns to the boat, William is dead with a key sitting next to his body. That was the most cartoonish nonsense I have ever seen. I understand it better upon rewatching the footage a few times, but good lord, the story of this game just feels like the scriptwriter was high. With her father killed, Arthur's sister can move on, earning us the final astral piece. Throughout the game, I've been giving all of these to the creepy guy in the sunplex. When you give him all 26 of those pieces, he combines them into a second red stone knife, as if this game wasn't already drowning in fantasy tropes. He claims that this stone belongs to Richard and that it will be handed over when the time is right. The key by William's body was to the engine room, so Richard makes his way there. Inside is this map that you have to memorize to complete the final encounter more easily. I had a screenshot of this on my other monitor during the whole sequence, and it was still a struggle to navigate. Richard enters the area, finding his father, who, just as William warned, has been possessed by the red stone. He turns into this demon ghost thing, and Richard is left to try and turn the lights on for this part of the boat. This can be done by finding a wheel behind these boxes, using it to turn these 2 valves, and then activating these 2 panels. Richard returns to his father, combining and destroying the stones. The ship begins to destabilize or some other supernatural thing, and Richard makes his way to the front of the ship. There are 4 endings that can be attained here. The first requires you to die before you can make it to the front of the ship. This is really challenging to do on accident since you have 90 seconds to get there and it only takes 30 seconds to do it. When the time runs out, the ship quite literally ascends into the sky via a beam of light. The final credits show a newspaper article detailing the mysterious disappearance of both Richard and his father. This ending's okay. It makes sense for a bad ending, but the fact that it was done through a newspaper feels kinda lazy compared to the other endings. The next ending I got will require you to make it to the front of the ship, where Kreia will send Richard back home before the ship ascends. He and the officer will try to leave home, but the car doesn't start. Richard heads off to grab some tools from the back to fix it, finding the red stone. Woo! I don't understand how this is physically possible, but it's a decent little twist ending. If you were able to get all 26 astral pieces and have the creepy man turn them into a second red stone, then you have the ability to get 2 more endings. During that final scene, the man is behind an engraving of the sun on the wall where he offers Richard the stone. If you take it, Richard returns to his time and immediately sacrifices the officer so that he can use the power of the stone. If you don't take the knife, the creepy man destroys it and you get an extra interaction with Kreia. Here you are returned to your own home where you get a cheesy compilation of the 4 total times we saw Kreia alongside this portrait of her in a completely different art style. I have some very mixed feelings when it comes to Echo Knight. On one hand, I didn't like the story. It made use of overdone narrative tropes, it was really confusing at times, and there were tons of odd situations and loose ends that were never clarified. Remember Alan Rockwell, the guy who killed that king for the stone? He was never mentioned again. The gameplay itself is where Echo Knight really shines. Exploring this ghost ship and resolving people's issues to help them rest in peace is such a cool concept, and I'd love to see it done with a better story. Because most of these characters go unnamed, the impact behind helping them is lessened, but going into their memories to solve puzzles and help them is fun nonetheless. I really liked the idea behind using the light to keep yourself safe. I would have loved to see the light switches placed in more difficult areas so that it's a challenge to get to each one and render the rooms you're exploring safe from the hostile ghosts. The controls aren't good, but that's because of the technological limitations of the time. With what they had to work with, I'm impressed. I got used to how it controlled fairly quickly and managed to get through the chase scenes without too many control issues. The game is impossible to get nowadays unless you emulate it or go broke. That makes me wish we could get some kind of remake with modern controls and a better story. 2 sequels and a spin-off were released with the most modern entry being on the PS2. Those are probably the closest that we'll get to modern Echo Knight, since FromSoft has some far more profitable series to focus on. Although it's definitely showing its age, I was really impressed by Echo Knight. The concept is really cool, and I had so much fun with the gameplay that I'll absolutely be replaying it in the future. I hope to see you all again. Have a great rest of your day.